This week on the Notorious Scoundrels podcast.
Wait. Nothing. Just calm it down again. I'm just kidding. Sorry.
That's how this is going to be. All right, sweet.
I knew.
Let's continue.
It's like makes so much sense right now. It's like so entertaining. Look at this smirky chuckle. Look at this guy.
Chuckle. What's a chuckle?
I've never chuckle in my life. You take that back.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels, a podcast focused on tactics and competitive play for Star Wars Legion. Hosted by Kyle Dornbos, Michael Barry, and David Zelenka, with Jay Shalansky, the man behind the glass.
Welcome to the Notorious Scoundrels podcast, a podcast about Star Wars Legion focused on competitive play and improving your game. My name is David. I also go by Endless Online, and I'm joined today by Mike and Kyle. Say what's up, guys.
Hey.
What's up?
And we're glad to be with you all today, and we're going to launch into some housekeeping real quick. Mike, you want to talk about what's going on with our Patreon?
Yeah, so we are up to about $450 a month. Thank you, everyone. The support has been absolutely amazing. We really, we're doing this for you, and we really couldn't do it without, knowing that you guys are all there and that you guys are listening to our stuff. And this is just a community that we get to be a part of. We are getting very close to hitting our $500 goal monthly, and once that happens, we'll go ahead and start releasing battle reports once a month. So that'll be coming. We also have a $1,000 goal, which hopefully will kind of get us towards live streaming additional events like we did at Adepticon last year. So we're really hoping to kind of get that ball rolling because it is not cheap. But so that's kind of where we're at with the Patreon.
So if you've already signed up there, thank you. We massively appreciate your support. If you haven't, please consider doing so. Patreon.com/thefifthtrooper. If you saw our Adepticon stuff and you want us to do more of that, let us know with your money so we can make that happen. YouTube, let's talk YouTube a little bit as well. So with GenCon coming, which we're going to talk about a little bit later in the show, we're going to have a bunch of new stuff going up on the YouTube, and we're pretty close now to pushing that YouTube into partnership territory. So if you watch our YouTube videos and you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. It's completely free. You can hit the subscribe button and the bell so that we can notify you when we have new content up on that channel. So we also appreciate you if you're already subscribing, you've already done this, and thanks so much for that. So I think that's just about all the housekeeping we're going to do. Oh, I'm going to say one more thing. The Yavin-based Team League is in full swing. If you're in that league and you're listening to the sound of my voice, we are extending round 2 until August 12th. August 12th is going to be the deadline for that. If you haven't joined it or you don't know what it is, Yavin-based Team League is a Swiss-style tournament for Star Wars Legion where teams of 5 are competing for the title of Team League champion. And you can check that out on twitch.tv/YavinBase, which is associated with 5th Trooper Notorious Scoundrels as well. All right, let's launch into Exploration, our second segment here. Kyle, this is a really cool list you have for us today, played by Ben. Tell us all about it and why it's interesting.
So this is a list that Mbueha, Ben from the Discord, wanted our PQ with recently. It's essentially Leia Sabine, but also with an X-34 land speeder. So it's Leia with improv, Sabine with stims. He's got a shield on here, but he said he would probably take some other stuff potentially instead of that shield in the future. He's got 4 Rebel Troopers with Z6, 1 with a medic, 3 Sniper Strike teams, and then an X-34 with the RPS-6 rocket gunner, the Mark II medium blaster, and the speeder jockey. And that comes to 796. So it's a pretty interesting list. Basically, you're taking like your quote-unquote standard, Leia Sabine Rebel Trooper spam, strike team spam, and just replacing a couple of those Rebel Troopers with a land speeder. And he said he was using this to do. So we're going to use this segment to talk more generally just about, at least today, about Rebel vehicles, because there have been some RPQs recently, one with various Rebel lists that include vehicles. And I know vehicles are sort of out of favor right now, but obviously they work. So we're going to start here with Ben's list. He said part of the idea of this list was to actually do a turn 1 explosions and deliver Sabine via the land speeder near the end of the turn. So, obviously we haven't personally seen it in action, but in talking with him, it seemed to work pretty well and also surprised his opponents.
Yeah, I'm not sure anybody ever kind of expects the turn 1 explosions, right? That's kind of generally like a turn 2 through 4 play often. So to have Sabine jump out of a land speeder at the end of the turn and bomb your face in, or just like toss a couple bombs down, is there's some surprise to that.
Yeah, you generally don't put Sabine in the land speeder because it makes her save so much worse. Like one of her big strengths, right, is that 3-up red dice save. With a red dice with the surge on defense, and the land speeder, of course, is just a straight downgrade when you put her in there. But I suppose it can work. I notice he doesn't take an uplink on his land speeder in this list, so he can't play explosions and uplink the speeder. He's sort of just relying on improvised from Leia to keep that land speeder out of the picture until later in the round, which has the potential to backfire, right? Because you shuffle your order pool after improvising, and you might actually end up with the heavy token right back on the top of your stack if you're not careful.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you got 4 core and 3 special forces and Leia in there, also improv's fairly reliable in throwing a token back. So I can see how that worked. I'm sure that he put his speeder behind something so that it didn't get nuked on the first turn with Sabine in it, while he was waiting for his opportunity.
I like how he squeezed a 4-point bid in there too. This has got a lot of stuff for having a 4-point bid.
Yep.
So, 4 Zs, a medic, 3 snipers. It's very threatening in a lot of ways. But instead of like Luke Sabine, his 2 major threats with the land speeder and Sabine instead.
Yeah, and that X-34, he's got a rocket gunner and the Mark II on it, so it's not like you can just ignore it after it deposits Sabine. That's a lot of firepower.
Yeah, I mean, I think generally speaking, we're starting to see a little bit of a resurgence in Rebel vehicles just because it's one of the ways the Rebels can actually kind of get their firepower to the fight before it dies to some extent. Not that all Rebels die before they get to the fight, but
what they do with those Death Troopers.
Sure, I mean that's the thing, right? An ATRT or a land speeder can soak a Death Trooper shot and be okay.
Yeah. Death Troopers are actually pretty bad against vehicles.
Yeah, I mean, they've got that kind of generic impact on their DLT equivalent, but as far as like being effective against vehicles, they're just as effective as like a Stormtrooper squad for the most part. Is it the same amount of dice? I guess it's 1 extra, technically.
Yeah, so potentially marginally better because they got precise 2 and 1 extra dice to reroll for crit fishing, but probably going to get 2 impact hits in there. It's not a great use of a 120 point unit.
No. I think the other thing that the land speeder brings is just that you can trade a range 4 shot back if you need to.
Right.
Rebels are kind of lacking in that department if you're not taking Pathfinders, and the Pathfinders dice aren't super great. I'm sure we've talked about that a few times at this point, but the land speeder's dice are. They're not bad.
Yeah, the thing hits like a truck.
That's because it is like
a space jeep.
Yep.
With the guns bolted on.
Space pickup.
Well, it's well stated, right? At range 3 with this build out, if you had the A300 gunner at range 3, you're just like 1 dice off a Death Trooper. You have like 2 white instead of 2 red in that pool, and it has the same dice quality almost as Death Troopers. But he went for what I think is like the well, it's not really the cheap build, but it's like sort of the medium grade where you take a Mark II and a rocket gunner, but no A300, no uplink, none of the extras. You take like the absolute essentials to doing damage, which is this rocket gunner blaster thing with the jockey. I mean, this is kind of the standard now. We've seen this land speeder build a lot in lists that run it. I notice about his list, though, he has no points invested in Astromechs. He has a medic instead of 2 Astros and a deeper bid. I think that's wise, considering that medical droids are so extremely useful, especially when you have a list with characters like Sabine, and especially when you have strike teams as well. A lot of demand for those medic charges in this list, and maybe his feeling, I'm going to guess, maybe his feeling is if they're shooting my land speeder, they're probably going to kill it anyway, which is great because it just takes pressure off my other threats and takes pressure off my core.
Yeah, and by that time, Sabine is in your face. So
I think the other biggest thing between the land speeder and the ATRTs is just like if the land speeder is taking fire and taking damage, it's probably getting wasted by something with a large hit pool. Whereas like the ATRTs, because they just have armor and not, armor X, I think they're more prone to like taking a DLT chip shot, and then you're like, okay, I heal it back, right? The other thing is that the ATRTs are way easier to keep in your line. They don't have a, compulsory move every turn that you have to, kind of force your Astromechs up with.
It's interesting they class RTs in the support category, I think, for precisely that reason, because they're just, mechanized infantry, I guess, for lack of a better word. A chicken walker with a machine gun bolted on that's just going to stand in your line or, partially in front of your line to give you some light cover to shoot out from. Whereas, the land speeder, like you say, it's heavy, it has a role on its own. It's meant to be a self-contained kind of fly towards my enemy and destroy him type unit. Yeah, I think that's well stated.
And we should note that so the laser RT is not super popular right now, but just because vehicles aren't. That was actually sort of a staple back in the pre-sniper days. But mostly right now, what you see is the rotary or the flamer, and obviously those are 2 very different units. I personally am a fan of the flamer, just because you get to roll fistfuls of dice, and there's nothing scarier than like 3 flame RTs charging towards your lines. We've talked in the past on the show about the Sorry About the Barbecue list, where you uplink them and you use Sorry About the Mess to get like a priority 0 flame turn. And Han also works great with them because of reckless diversion. My daughter likes flame RTs too. And of course you have the rotary version, which is just more sit back near those astromechs, near support troops, and just provide fire support. I think both versions are solid. I think, at least for me personally, if I'm going to play a rebel vehicle list, I want to go more jank, more shock and awe. But obviously people have had success with the good old fashioned rotary club also.
I definitely have found some success there. And actually, Mike, if you want to talk about Paul Watson, brought his list to an RPQ in Muncie, I think is where it was, where he had a Sabine Rotaries style list.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was like a very unexpected kind of RPQ win, especially coming off the Tale of Worlds and everything, where we saw 2 to 3 SABs or 2 to 3 strike teams. I mean, in just about every list, coming in with rotaries and astromechs. I mean, frankly, they're pretty good against snipers, and they're pretty good against SABs too. Both strike team variants can't really interact with vehicles very well. There's some corner cases there, but overall, just I think it's a decent meta call. If you want to like push a sniper team with a rotary ATRT, like that's pretty reasonable. And they're just generally pretty hardy against rebels, since they lack the impact that is required to generally take them off the board. And with the addition of the astromechs, it makes the DLTs far less effective against armor.
Triple rotary is really scary as a rebel player. Can confirm. I remember the last time I saw triple rotary in Team League. It was like it was getting to the point where the person playing the rotaries didn't even do the objectives. They actually just tabled their opponent because their rotaries were doing so much damage. And I think his opponent's Luke died early, and the rotaries just tore him apart because there was nothing he could do. And they were aim shooting almost every turn, and the center could not hold against that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also worth mentioning that the new upgrade, the linked targeting array or whatever, is like potentially very good on rotary ATRGs. I think it definitely competes with Umplick, which is kind of a downside for like the barbecue list. But you also like Kyle, you can speak to this probably better than I can. A single aim token on a flamer is probably not that big a deal as opposed to on a rotary.
Yeah, you definitely get more mileage out of it as a rotor. Usually with a flamer, if you're shooting your desired targets, you're probably overkilling them anyway. But certainly with a rotary, they're much less likely to need that uplink for the surprise order. And, the link targeting array is cheaper. It's only 5 points. And of course, aim tokens are great on rotaries. So I think it's also great on the X34 as a cheap, X34s love aim tokens. So, if you put the link targeting array on there, you're potentially, if you could do your compulsory plus an aim action, you're potentially throwing 2 aim tokens that are pretty sizable dice pool. So
all of a sudden you're pseudo precise 2 or whatever. You're rerolling just same as a Death Trooper shot as far as the dice you're rerolling.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is pretty dope.
I want to try that now. I've got to try Leia Landspeeder again with the link targeting array, because that's actually pretty dope when I think about it now. It's sort of like, and if I have to double move, I can take it, and I have an aim token anyway. I don't need to worry about aiming because I just have it because, I have enough orders on the Landspeeder. I think the only turn you wouldn't have an order on the speeder for that would be Bombardment, because that's... Well, Bombardment and No Time, because those are the 2 cards of Leia's repertoire that can't target vehicles. But LTA, definitely great. It's been great for the tank so far in Team League. It's been great for ATSTs, I think, just because, vehicles love aim tokens. And I mean, it speaks to sort of a larger issue with vehicles, right? And this is, maybe broadening the discussion a little bit further. You bring vehicles to do damage. Like, that's their main purpose, is to do a damage or to bring a threat your opponent can't easily deal with. And making sure that when you roll, it's a good roll is really vital. This thing will only have six chances potentially to attack in any given game. And if you're going to pay, in the case of the Landspeeder, 150 plus points, or in the case of an ATST, 200 plus points, you're going to want to make sure that 10 to 25% of your list functions well.
Yeah, I mean, like, you're bringing a non-scoring unit essentially,
right?
So, like, what are you bringing it for? You're bringing it to deal damage to your opponent, because that's really all they're good for. Like, them surviving is like, I mean, great. Like, you'll not lose the kill points, but it's not like keeping a unit leader alive in a squad and you're like, okay, well, I can still do whatever with this. I think that a large unexplored territory, and I think it would actually probably be a good thing to do a video segment on it at some point, is like blocking with vehicles, because that's one of the things that vehicles are really good at that a lot of people, and I mean, like, even me, like, I don't use vehicles nearly enough to be able to effectively block every game, but like being able to just like block your opponent's move paths and stuff, it's kind of similar to how blocking works in Armada by putting a ship in another ship's path so it can't move. I think there's a lot to be said for the ability of vehicles to kind of block your opponent's approach to certain objectives. But if they're not killing stuff and you're not good at blocking, or you don't know how, or the table's not very good for blocking, then you're kind of in a hole that you got to dig yourself out of.
It's worth.
There's a couple. Go on.
I was going to say it's worth noting that often the best targets for vehicles are blocking our other vehicles, right? Because they're they can't just move sideways like a trooper can. So like a lot of people have including me, have been excited about using flamethrower RTs against droids. But, one of the best counters droids have to flame RTs is Droidicus. Like literally just get in their way. And it's a unit with cohesion, so you can, lock that front notch and then put the other Droidica on one side or the other, and prevent it from reversing. So it's CIS players. Once there are CIS players, if you run across flame RTs, think about that one. But obviously that works, even if you're in an RT versus RT situation, or if you've got like a tank. This works great with naked ATRTs. I know that people have run naked ATRTs quite a bit, but they have literally nothing else to do besides block and melee. So if you've got an opposing vehicle on the table, do that notch to notch lock, and basically prevent it from moving unless it wants to reverse. So
they can also prevent trooper units in some instances from charging as well, just because they're going to force them to move around the base because you can't move through a ground vehicle. So I mean that's the other use as well. Not only just I was thinking of chicken fight. Basically you have two ATR2s looking at each other. One has a flamer, one doesn't, but they're sort of they're kind of stuck in place, kicking each other. They can't get away because they would lose their second action to actually do their shot.
Well, one of the other things related to blocking you can do too is just covering mines. So when you determine eligible targets for like a charge, like a proton charge, it's line of sight from the unit to the mine, and if they can't see the mine, they can't be hit by it. So there's no prohibition that prevents putting vehicles on top of mines. So like if you've got a charge that you're worried about, just walk an ATRT on top of it.
It's literally like jumping on a grenade.
It is, yeah.
Yeah. I think there's one stipulation against the conditioned mines, but against saboteur mines, it should work.
Yeah, it definitely works against sab mines.
Charges, it should work.
As long as we're talking about ATRGs and chicken fights, it is worth noting that kicking somebody in the face with your ATRT's melee attack is pretty good. Like they're
3 red, no cover, surge crit. It's gonna hurt.
It's no joke. It could be a little better if it had Pierce or something, but it's not that far off like Chewie's melee attack. So,
presuming you survived the approach, you can also, snuggle up to a tank in the side arc, get impact 2 going while you're blocking them from pivoting. You do something fun like that.
Yeah. So
you can jam a tank up. If the tank's protecting its side arc against one building, you can try to steer your RT to block the pivot because there's now no room on either side for them to pivot, so they're just kind of locked in place.
Get wrecked.
So there's a lot of fun room to explore there with melee blocking, I think. All right, we have other things we want to talk about with vehicles. Maybe we should talk about Astromechs real quick because we didn't really explore that concept. Ben invested in no Astromechs, but Paul Watson, I believe, invested in 3, 1 for each RT, and I think that's, I think the reason for that, is that the land speeder has natural cover, and so it has a defense against impact weapons, whereas the ATRTs don't.
I think specifically against the impact weapons that you're afraid of, right? Like, you can't do anything against Bosk. You can't do anything against Veers. Like, those things are just going to hit you, and they're going to hurt, and you're going to have to kind of either sack one of your ATRTs, or you're just going to have to get over it. Whereas, if you're being pinged by DLTs, like we were saying earlier, like, the land speeder deals with that because it got cover, and the ATRTs deal with that with the Astromechs. I find the Astromechs interesting because a lot of the times I kind of think of them as a little bit of a kind of like a hedged bet. in that, if your opponent sees that you've got like 4 astromechs, they might not even shoot at your armored vehicles. And you've effectively paid for astromechs that are essentially like you bought the ability for your vehicles to live.
It's like life insurance.
And they might not actually heal it. Yeah, totally, it is. But the question becomes like, what is the right amount of astromechs that you should buy to like force your opponent into feeling like that? I am suspicious that the number is around 2.
Yeah.
Generally, I think more than that is maybe a little overkill. I can see 3, but I think if you're going deeper than that, you need a really good reason.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it was one per Astrum or 1 per RT in Paul's case, but I'm totally in agreement there. I think 2 is the right number. The Landspeeder also has a problem where if it needs to compulsory a lot, then it's going to run away from the Astromex potentially. But I usually play mine kind of in the hover mode, where you don't actually do any move actions. You just compulsory and you sort of what do you call that? And you kind of let your car idle forward. You do that sort of thing.
Yeah, you just coast up.
Yeah, you just coast. You don't actually do any move actions, and that just takes care of it for me. And they move at speed 2, so you're totally able to keep Astromex with it. There's no reason not to invest the extra help, especially because the Landspeeder hurts a lot when it's shooting things out of cover. All right, so we have any closing thoughts on exploration Rebel vehicles? Nope, we're good. All right, so moving on. Advanced tactics. So we're going to talk a little bit about Leia Organa today, because we haven't done a deep dive on Leia in a while. And there's now some new things in the meta that have altered her ranking in terms of where you put her when you consider what commanders to take. And there's also been competition now for points in the Rebels kind of commanders and operatives spots, because now we have Sabine in the world. And there's a lot of different things that are now happening, as opposed to the old days where Leia was it. Like, she was the only stop on the second commander option train. Except maybe for Han. Maybe you went to Han sometimes. But Leia was basically the rock. And I think in a lot of ways she still is. So who'd like to open this one up?
So we've never actually, I think, done like a proper deep dive on Leia. Even though she's been out forever. But she is, the reason we're talking about this now is because I feel like she's at least recently been kind of getting replaced by Sabine. A lot of people are fashionably running Luke Sabine, which it's an excellent list. So, that's understandable. But I think there's definitely still a good place for Leia in Rebel lists. Personally, I like Leia plus Sabine or Leia plus Luke for the same reason that I like Veers Bosk or Krennic Bosk better than Double Bounty, and that's because of activation control, and more specifically control of your focus pieces, right? Like with Luke Sabine, you've got 2 focus pieces, and you don't always have 100% control over them. With Leia Sabine or with Leia Luke, in each of those cases, you've got 1 focus piece and a support piece, and you can basically exercise full control over your focus piece while Leia does support things, handing out dodges, inspiring, etc. So there's a lot of her kit, I think, that is undervalued, particularly Inspire 2. In this world where we have Death Troopers and Bosk and soon mortars, which we've been told are in that interview with Alex and Luke a while ago, are at least suppressive. There's going to be a lot of suppression going around, and then Inspire makes a big difference, especially Inspire 2 on 1 model. So I think that's an underrated part of her kit for sure. She's great at managing the sniper game. Coordinated bombardment is a great card generally, but it's especially good against sniper strike teams. And especially if you hold it, it kind of forces your opponent to make some tough decisions. Like, do they hold their sniper strike teams in out of sight until you play it, And if you just don't play it, do they stay there indefinitely, or do they move them out and then they get, a sniper model from each team scoped by Leia? It's a great card to have there in the sniper war. Her 2-pip No Time for Sorrows is great with both Luke and Sabine, and it's great generally for a lot of other things. It's great with Sabs. It's great just even sometimes in Rebel Troopers for like doing peekaboo shenanigans. It's sort of like half of a peekaboo, So if you do like a last shot with a unit on the previous turn, you can use No Time for Sorrows to pull them back behind cover before the turn starts.
Fleets.
Yep, fleets are great with it. It's a super versatile card. It's a speed 1 move, which may not seem like a lot, but it's a speed 1 move before the turn starts. So there's lots of great things you can do with that. I like to use it on Luke after someone's withdrawn from him on the previous turn, or if you're anticipating like a whipcord or something like that. So, what do you guys think about Leia generally?
Man, it's so hard for me to give her up. So I've played a lot of non-Leia lately. I've played a lot of Flyboys. I've played some Luke Sabine. I've played even Luke Officer Sabine, and I've recently gone back to playing Twins, and man, do I miss it, because there are so many things about the game that she makes infinitely easier, especially protecting your core units with Take Cover 2 and with Inspire 2. Those are like the biggest parts of her kit. Plus, she's also a gun because of Sharpshooter 2. We didn't mention Save Our Skins, which is her 3rd command card. There's some really interesting potentials there, especially with the double activation that you get from it. You can combine it with Inspire to free a unit that would otherwise panic and then activate that unit before it gets shot again, which is super nice. Of course, that leaves you potentially you could potentially cheat yourself out of activating last if you're on equal activations because you have the double activation up front. But generally, it's a great card just because it's a 3-pip that has a special effect that you might not need, but if it's there if you want it. So it's just I usually rate it as like a slightly better ambush in that instance.
Assault.
I mean, Kyle already mentioned No Time. Slightly better assault, not ambush. Yes,
yeah, we got you. Yep.
Thank you. I appreciate that. But yeah, I mean, she's got lots of things.
She does have a lot of things.
Sorry, people are gesturing at me on camera here, and I can't. I'm losing my train of thought.
She's got lots of things. She's
got lots of great things about her. It's very descript,
So, as a primary non-rebel player, one of the things we had talked about before this segment was that you guys kind of wanted to talk about this because Leia was sort of dropping out of the meta is not the right word, but she kind of is disappearing from a lot of lists. I actually kind of feel the opposite, and this is going to probably be a little bit of a hot take. I actually think that Luke is dropping out of a lot of lists, and I think Leia is really becoming more of a cornerstone for rebel armies now that people are sort of like figuring stuff out. Like Crisscross Luke Sabine is definitely really good, but you miss Leia in that list a lot. You miss improv, you miss all of
command.
Yeah, just having a command slot in your army is pretty big. I think we've seen to some extent people playing generics over Leia. I think generally the only time that's probably air quotes like right is when you've got a lot of vehicles in your list, because Leia doesn't synergize with vehicles very well. No Time for Sorrows doesn't. If No Time for Sorrows doesn't work on the units that you need it to work on, I think Leia gets a lot worse.
You know what it is great with? Is Tauntauns.
Yeah.
So Tauntauns have Well, there's a million reasons it's good with Tauntauns. So Tauntauns have Agile 1, which gives them a dodge token whenever they take a standard move. So you'll notice the text of Agile does not say move action. So that includes the speed 1 move from No Time for Sorrows.
Dodge tokens. Get your dodge tokens.
Yeah. So not only it's like a combination of my ally as the Force and No Time for Sorrows when you use it on Tauntauns.
So you can potentially go from in hiding to in your opponent's face with 3 dodges in the span of 1 turn.
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I actually want to talk about a list idea. This is one that Kingsley came up with. Of course, Kingsley came up with this one because it has 12 activations in it. But it's basically Leia. 6.
I'll take a little credit too. He and I talked about this a lot.
Okay. But
I'm going to dive in here and take it as well.
All right. But it's essentially you're taking like the quote unquote standard efficiency Wonder Twins build, and you're just replacing Luke with 2 Tauntauns. So it is Leia, 6 Z6s, 3 sniper strike teams, and 2 Tauntauns. And I think there's even points in there for like a medic or something.
Gross.
Yeah, I know, right? And so you can there's a lot of ways that's good. The first is you have 12 activations, so you can hold your 2 Tauntauns, until last on 1 turn. And if your opponent, even if they have 10 activations, which is a lot, they still will have gone through their entire turn before you activate either of your Tauntauns. So you just do a last Tauntaun charge. They have about like 18-inch range, which is roughly range 3. And then immediately the next turn you go with them first. And cause all kinds of mess. And then like once your opponent is done dealing with your Tauntauns, you still have Leia 6 Z6s and 3 snipers. So
doesn't seem bad.
Seems good.
It's a lot of plastic.
It's like, oh my gosh, I'm glad I still finally killed these Tauntauns after they murdered a couple of my core units. Oh, look, there's 10 activations of Z6s and snipers.
Right, and you're down to 8 now, and you're like, oh, all right.
Right.
Great. I mean,
yeah.
The list has 47 models in it, which is, not bad.
You do have to accept, I think, at the outset of the game that your Tauntauns are going to die.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Dodges can only take them so far.
I mean, that's
true.
It's the same thing with like Flame RTs, right? They're an aggressive in your face unit. You sort of accept that like their goal is to kill more things than to kill enough things such that by the time they're dead, your opponent can't come back, right?
For sure. They're not Luke.
No.
I mean, Luke, and they might be better than Luke. Just so we're clear here, like not being Luke does not mean that they're not good. But they got to get in there and kill stuff. And if you lose them on the way in before they do the damage, I do think you're in a little bit of a pickle.
Yeah, they're not nearly as flexible or as versatile or as toolsy as Luke. Right? Like they're super mobile. They can kill things really well when they can ram. But they don't have force push. They don't have a command bubble. They don't have command cards. So it's not like you can just delete Luke and put into Tauntauns and that's a net gain necessarily. It might be better, but it's better for different reasons, right?
So here's a question. You've got Leia in the sweet list. You've got No Time for Sorrows, which is a great 2-pip. Are you running Turning the Tide?
No.
I think that you are, because if you're running push, well, here I'll await your counter argument. There's 2 reasons.
All right.
One, Tauntauns are vulnerable to suppression, right?
Yes.
They don't get cover from it. They only have courage 2. So suppressing them is a valid thing. So if you use it on them, they can actually inspire each other, which is helpful. But 2, like if you're doing push, what are you giving an order to besides Leia and a Tauntaun?
That's the exact issue that I'm having with Turning the Tide. Let's say you didn't play it absolutely perfectly. Let's say also that Leia's out of range because you double moved up there. Now what are you giving an order to? Because if your 2 Tauntauns are the only eligible targets for turning the tide in your list, you'll get the inspire effect, but you won't get the orders. And so then you're just kind of leaving it to the stack and your improv.
Well, I mean, I think there's a good chance that that's an early card that you play, turn 1 through 3 before your Tauntauns are either dead or out of range of Leia.
Right, that would have to be the way you do it.
I'm on Team Endless.
All right.
I think that like there's a high likelihood that you are using No Times for Sorrows to engage on turn 2.
Yep.
And I think that unless you're planning on turning the tide on turn 1, there is a very serious likelihood that you never actually get to play turning the tide for value.
Yeah, it's possible. I can see that.
You might also have enough tools to manage their suppression between strict orders and endurance if you don't take tenacity. I know that's kind of like the big conflict right now is do you take tenacity or do you take endurance? I feel like tenacity strict will probably be enough if you play them right. I think but that's like completely skill cap dependent. And like if you can set up the, entry turn where they don't get seen, if you can set up an exit turn where they ram a different unit at speed 3 and then use their creature trooper rules to run away behind line of sight blocking terrain before being shot again. Like there's all kinds of crazy stuff you can pull off with your Tauns. They're a very high skill cap unit, but again, I'm just not seeing turning the tide being played for value, mostly because turn 1 you'll probably play standing orders, issue it to 1 Tauntaun, and then improv when the second one comes up.
That's an interesting point. Is it possible that you run turning the tide specifically just so that you play at turn 1 and you don't have to run endurance on the way in?
That's possible. You'll have Inspire 6 if you have Leia there. It's a lot of Inspire.
It is. So you're essentially guaranteeing that you start turn 2 with no suppression tokens.
That's pretty sick, actually, considering that Imperials outrange you, generally speaking. Okay.
Yeah, there you go.
I dig that.
There you go.
You'll probably. Well, do you care about going first because you got 12 Acti?
No, I don't think so.
No, you don't care.
I think you actually don't want to go first, at least on those first couple turns.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what you're going to be playing against, I think.
Yeah.
Like if you're playing against somebody that's going to bombard you,
yeah, that's in the
probably
ether.
safe play and turning the tide, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some of the answers to these questions are in the ether.
In the ether.
Nah, man, they're just in the logic knot that is this game.
Which is great. It's awesome.
No, this game is decided by dice, not logic, sir.
I'm sorry. I'm going to hard disagree. Jay's over here. He's shaking his head. Like, yeah, it's the dice. Nah, man. It's the skill. It's the skill.
It's
Just ask Kyle. It's not the
That's
dice.
Right. Sometimes you just got to roll a hard 6. All right. You guys got any other Leia thoughts?
I'm not sure. Well, her shooting versus the generic officer is way better.
Oh yeah, no question.
Leaps and bounds.
Yeah, leaps and bounds. And she's a gun, and the officer is decidedly not a gun. Even though he has sharpshooter 1, he only has 2 dice and no pierce, so he's like a worse sniper rifle, a much worse sniper rifle. He doesn't even have surge crit, does he? His surge hit. So Leia is like better in almost every respect, shooting wise.
Yeah, and I think that as long as we're talking about Leia's shooting, it's also worth mentioning that now that people are taking Luke and to some degrees like just another character out of the equation, tossing Chewie in there is not the worst play. We were talking about turning the tide, but like brains and brawn is also pretty good.
Yeah,
the slowest nuke ever.
But man, it hurts if you can land it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like a lightsaber. It hurts really bad.
Yeah. I was actually thinking earlier today about Leia Chewie Tauntaun lists.
Yeah.
It's a little.
I think so too. It's
you got to cut you got to go down to 11 and maybe even 10 activations to pull that off. But I could see something to that. Chewie's Guardian is constantly underrated, but it's great for the sniper war, right? Like your opponent tries to snipe your snipers, you just eat it. 1 health on Chewie. Okay, he's got 8 more.
Oh man, now we have now we're gonna have the Guardian medic complex with Tauntauns. Now the Tauntauns dodge. Whatever the dodges don't pick up, the Guardian picks up.
Yep.
Whatever crits they have, they try to roll their 5 up against it. There's a medic behind them to heal that. So now we're gonna have the Guardian medic complex for Tauns. That's
yeah. I mean, you start to get into this thing where you got to like put at least 5 hits into something before you can like actually start putting hits on target.
Yeah, before you kill 1 model in the Tauns unit.
Well, I mean, like,
gosh.
they got 2 dodge tokens when you Guardian 3. Like, you gotta put
that's 5 hits.
You gotta put a 6th hit through there to even make them roll a save on the Tauntauns. Like, that's a way to deal with Death Troopers.
Or just use Bosk.
Look, man,
that's true.
Bosk is really good. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe you guys got to train your rebel bounty hunters better.
No, it is seriously though. It is worth mentioning that Tauntauns would appear to be super vulnerable to Hunter.
Would appear to be.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Bosk looks at Tauntauns. He's like, oh, I got delivery this time. I don't have to go get the meat myself.
Yeah, right. Exactly. And Hunter's also a super popular upgrade on Death Troopers. So,
it's going to get more so. It's actually already shifting because of Tauntauns. Like, let's put Hunter on DTs now.
Yeah, so if you got Tauntauns, don't try and do like a Charge of the Light Brigade against Death Troopers.
You'll just be very. They're going to roll like 1,000,000 saves, and you'll be very sad.
Well, even not even the saves. Like they will, especially if they can get to range 2, they'll roll like 11 dice with multiple aim tokens, and you'll be sad panda, sad Tauntaun.
You don't get to do that very often, but man, when you do, those aim tokens get really good, really fast.
Yeah, that range 2 Death Trooper shot, man, is nasty.
Deploy the garrison much.
Yeah, right. Which they also get a free aim token from. So don't try and charge headlong into Death Troopers and expect that to go well.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Now, if you can get there, if you're certain you can get there before they shoot you, then that's another story. But anyway, that was a digression. You guys got any other Leia thoughts?
Leia's still good. I don't think she's ever going away. I mean, she's marvelous, and I think she's still like the bedrock of most lists.
Yep.
I think these Luke Sabine generic is a fascination that will soon disappear as new things come into the meta. But
I don't know about that. It's a good list. It's not going to disappear.
It is.
I don't
mean to diss it. Yeah, it's a thing.
Hey, one of them's a dark saber.
Sure. Having 2 melee weapons that have the keyword pierce on them is a thing.
There you go.
There we go. Fixed.
2 laser sword things.
Laser swords. They're both laser swords. I'll give you that.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going anywhere. But I do think that Leia's still great. She is the glue.
All right. So keep taking Leia, guys, because she's great. All right. Moving on, we're going to talk about GenCon. We're going to talk a little bit. This is a news and hobby kind of segment we're going to do. So I have here GenCon predictions. What list do we think will do well? And of course, we're talking about all the toys that are going to be available at GenCon. An official article went out today telling us what Legion things will be available, and it's a lot. It's a lot of stuff.
It is a 100% increase in the amount of factions you can play in this game.
Yeah, Clone Wars is going to be available, so I'm excited.
Seems pretty good.
It's also Dewbacks and Shores.
Right, Dewbacks, Shores, and Clone Wars. I've seen people sort of sad panding in this move by FFG. I'm super excited. I'm not going to Gen Con, and I won't be able to get early Clone Wars, but I'm just like, I just love that people are getting it. I don't care whether it's me or somebody else. I love that it's in the wild.
Yeah, I mean, I don't care about this move specifically because you still can get it.
Yeah.
I have a problem with like the limited edition. You have to be at this place. We're not going to announce it ahead of time type deal. That's a little bit of a less feel goods. But this is just like, wait a month. You can get it on Amazon for cheaper than the people are getting it at Gen Con. You know, like.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah.
You know, support your little hobby shops,
And,
people.
Yeah, don't. Right.
But I'm just trying to make a point.
Yeah, go to your FLGS and get it.
Always support your LGS. Like, just do it.
Yep. But yeah, super exciting. People are we're in a week we're gonna have like pictures of painted B1 droids and Grievous and Obi-Wan and clones and stuff. I think it's awesome. How many suitcases did you bring, David?
Well, I'm bringing my regular suitcase and I have a larger suitcase that's empty. So
not enough.
I'm gonna need to get as much as I can get.
Have you had anyone ask you to pick up shorts for them?
Half a dozen people.
Okay. Can I be number 7?
Sure.
Okay.
It depends on how many they let me buy per day.
Okay.
I'm gonna be number 8, 9, and 10.
Yeah. It also depends on if I make the top 8 at Continentals. Because if I don't, guess we'll be in line first thing in the morning.
Yeah, there you
go. Yep.
Just so we're clear, we expect you to win the whole thing.
I'm gonna try, but I'm not taking the list you probably want me to take. But I'll try.
What
are you? So we're talking about Gen Con predictions.
Yeah,
you want to spill the beans?
Oh, me? Oh,
yeah.
Shoot. Well, I can't play veteran, so I'm just taking twins. No big deal. NVD. I'm gonna be the guy that doesn't take 3 snipers though, because I actually think 3 snipers is a bit of an overcommitment. I think Rebels want more. Rebels want snipers for their utility. They want them a little bit for the Pierce, but I think that in the long run, having beefier core units will serve you better, just because there's now a tendency in the overall scene, I think, to run less core in favor of more elite units. And I think there's a niche there where you can deny that in practice and say, I just have more dudes than you, and if I manage my range better than you, I win because I just have more stuff. So I'm doing the cis route where I just have more stuff than you.
I was gonna say, shouldn't you wait to play a new faction before you go into the I'm gonna take 1 billion dudes strategy?
Not when the mainstream lists are now running 5 or less core units. There are so many lists now out there that run 4 cores because that's how few they can get away with to run their elites and their triple snipers. Because they've really bought into this idea that snipers are it. And I have not bought in as hard as they have because boards are getting more crowded. And also, if you just have more stuff, you can cover more parts of the board. You can spread out a little further. You just have to adjust your positioning and play the position game to deny what they're trying to do. What good is explosions if it only has a couple targets? Not much. What good is, saboteurs if there's only a few targets? What good are snipers if you just deny them shooting? They're garbage because if they're not shooting, they're too minis and they're not contributing to the attrition war. Everything is bad when it doesn't get to shoot.
Yeah. And I think there's something to the full commando unit.
Yeah, I like it. I'm also not digging it just because it's DT fodder.
Yeah, I mean, so their problem is just that they're fragile.
Yeah.
But what the problem definitely is their shooting, right?
Yeah.
You
need an aim shot.
Yeah, you do, right.
They can't move and shoot like a Z6 can.
Right.
Which is my issue. Because I love the move shoot game where you find the moves that protect you and get you shots. And I despise having to sort of predispose myself and then force myself to go first with a particular unit. That's just not the way I play.
I mean, this is why ATRT rotaries are good, right? I mean, like, they're
Yes.
really not that much different from a, full commando unit shot. You lose a white die, and you lose sharpshooter 1. You lose
And Pierce. Yeah.
Like, but as far as we're talking about, like, substantive amount of hits, you are surging to crit as opposed to a hit.
Yeah.
I just like, it's definitely on a more sturdy platform when we're talking about, like, not losing the unit, and they're relatively the same price.
Oh yeah. Full commandos just melt. They have the same defense as rebel troopers basically, but they're 20 more points.
And also, I'm going to run into armor. People are going to run tanks. People are going to run Boba Veer still. And those problems that they had against Boba Veer still exist. Boba just sees them and kills off everything they're about, right? He has a rocket pack. He's got sharpshooter 2. What are you going to do, right? He's going to roll 5 hits at you, and you better pray your defense dice decide to cooperate, because you're going to lose, half of this expensive unit. And I think for the points, you actually take an Officer Z instead, because then you have a Courage 2 unit that has Inspire, has an extra guy, has six wounds instead of 5, still has range 3, doesn't have Pierce, but is not just Courage 2 by himself, he's also delivering an Inspire to a different unit as well. So he makes a friend of his Courage 2. There's like a window where he's Courage 2 because he's able to relieve suppression from a different unit. So the net effect is the same.
Yep. Yeah, I really like the Officer Z6 actually.
Me too.
So what do we think is going to actually do well at GenCon as far as lists are concerned?
Sabs. The terrain is LVO's terrain, essentially, from what I understand. It's going to be that level of crowded.
I think that's possible.
I think it's possible too. The important question there I have is Lupo going?
No,
because I have not seen anyone play Sabs like he can.
That's true.
So I think notionally I like that as a pick, but if Lupo's not going, I'm going to say it's going to be, I think it's going to be Veers Bosk. I think it's going to be Krennic Bosk. I think it's going to be Leia Sabine, and I think we're going to see a lot of Luke Sabine also.
Yep.
Those
are my big specters.
Yep. I know those are not like exciting picks, but
well, it's Continentals, right? People are going to play what wins.
Yep.
I think that there's going to be room for some stuff to get in under the wire.
Yeah, I'm sure we're definitely going to see some surprises.
I think if I had to bet on a new unit to break out, I think it would likely be tanks.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
double tank.
You guys have been following Team League a little more closely than me, but that was a thing recently, right? In Team League, double tanks.
Yeah, double tanks both with and without link targeting array, because we made that legal for Team League this last round, and there was one that did take it and one that didn't take it. But at the end of the day, I think double tank really, really smashed, even against Empire and even against Bosk. Bosk and Veers did a lot of damage to this tank, but it did not kill it. And this tank had 3 mechs behind it.
I mean, at the end of the day, crits are great for bypassing the armor keyword, but you still got to deal with the save.
Right. You also have to deal 8 damage past that save with Astromechs. So potentially 14 damage because you have 3 Astros healing this tank.
14 damage, which is an equivalent 28 hits that have bypassed armor to kill it.
It's a lot.
It is not trivial, to say the least.
Yeah, killing tanks with that level of Astromechs behind it is non-trivial. Plus, it's going to be a lot easier for tanks going forward to access aim tokens. So it's going to make the Pintle, really good because the Pintle has the 8 dice total ceiling, right? So you get a lot of these ceiling shots where, you'll just roll out to 6 hits potentially and then convert double on your aim tokens. And you're just going to get 6 hits after cover, which... Rebels don't save that usually.
Rebels don't save
Imperials. Well, they save some things. Got to respect your surges.
Hey, there are paint on those dice.
There are 1/3 of the facings.
Yeah.
But yeah, so what's going to do well? What's the breakout unit? Tanks are definitely the breakout unit because I think people have had a chance to play them more.
Yeah.
Sabine will. I don't know if you can call her a breakout unit. We know she's good.
Yeah.
But she's going to be there. There's going to be a lot of her. There's going to be a lot of Bosk. There's going to be a lot of Krennic. I just hope I don't run into DTs that often. That's all. That's my big problem. I have enough tools to deal with armor. I have Luke and I have 6 crit machines. Is what I have.
I wanna channel our producer for a second here. Whoever puts Jyn Erso in the top 4, give us a call.
I thought you were gonna like put some kind of reward on that or something.
Yeah, I thought so too.
Maybe there will be a reward on it. I haven't decided what it is. Maybe we'll like ship them some sweet, I don't know. I got a bunch of promos and stuff sitting on my desk, so maybe that'll be it. But
there you go.
So we're gonna write a biopic on Jay Shalansky's Legion career, and it's going to be called The Audacity of Hope because he insists on running Jyn Erso.
I mean, he did. So speaking of, Jay did write a great article on Jyn, which everybody should check out at fifthtrooper.com.
Yeah.
The
plugin.
Thefifthtrooper.com.
Thefifthtrooper.com.
Yeah, check out his Jyn article. Makes the case for running Jyn. So,
and more from us too, because we have many things in the works. Many things.
Yeah, this week there will be an article from me, which will be hopefully good. Yeah,
and our the people that are part of our Patreon also get those articles a little bit in advance. We're still doing all the articles and everything for free. We're not pay gauging anything, but we are kind of giving the people that are donating kind of a sneak peek what's coming in like a week or so. So that's just something to look out for. In the future when we're talking about like events and stuff, we might be posting lists and stuff ahead of time. So if you want to scope us at events, you can maybe check out our articles ahead of time. But
I also want to drop in real quick. I guess this is a plug kind of, but also not. Just a fun thing for you to participate in if you're listening to the sound of our voices. So at the Northeast Open, if you recall, Jay and John Bushman got into a little bit of a food coma induced argument about whether or not Jyn and the Pathfinders were any good. And Jay says yes, John says no. And so they're going to have it out live on stream for the benefit of the viewing audience. And that's tentatively scheduled for the Thursday after GenCon. So that's tentatively scheduled for Thursday, August 8th, I think, is that day. But we're going to have more details on that for you as we go along here. But look out for that on our properties, our media. We're gonna have a once and for all, is Jyn any good? We're gonna have that mega match decide it all between Bushman of Critical X and Jay from Fifth Trooper. And hopefully I'll get R1 to cast that as well as you guys, because we'd love to have a panel discussion with R1 alongside of us to talk about whether this is any good or not. Yeah, I totally dig it. Do you have any final thoughts about the tournament at Gen Con? I want to talk about the prizes, and I want to talk about something FFG did that's also really good. So the prizes for Continentals are alt art command cards and alt art unit cards of Jyn, Tauntauns, Krennic, etc. But I think FFG did a really good thing, and this speaks to something, Mike, that you said, that they're not doing exclusives. You can still get alternate art cards for these units. They're just different versions in the quarterly kits, but they're essentially the same art. They just have a different background. I think they don't have the laser lining that they have on some of these ones. So, I just wanted to throw that in about FFG. Not doing exclusive things, and making sure that even if you can't go to these big events, you're still included somehow in this alt art stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be really cool if in the future you could somehow like participate with the event on stream and get like rewards and stuff that way. I know that's really big with a lot of like video games right now, where they'll like drop a Twitch drop on people like throughout the cast and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. I think we're talking about command cards and unit cards. We're really talking about a cardboard piece of paper that's maybe 2 cents. Like the cost is really not that high. When you kind of get down to it, and you're like increasing viewership and stuff like that. So that's actually maybe a thought for us in the future, as to regards to like what we can do with our streams. But
is that what we're gonna pioneer? Are we gonna pioneer
I don't
Twitch
know.
play Star Wars?
I'm coming
Legions?
up with this on the fly because you mentioned.
I love it.
So
no, I think it's doable. We might have to. I mean, we'll have to figure out how to incorporate the order pool. That's the issue that I see.
Yeah.
And how you do unit collection. We'll have to like make sure every unit is properly ID'd and then get people to vote which unit to activate. Or something like that.
But yeah, so I think that's a good thing.
Yeah. All right. Any final thoughts about GenCon? Other than it's going to be amazing. And there'll be lots of pictures and videos coming out on Fifth Trooper related to it.
Watch the in-flight report.
Yes, watch the in-flight report.
Like
that's on the FFG's Twitch.
Yeah, it's 7 o'clock.
7 Central.
I think it's EST, 7 EST.
Oh, EST. Sorry, yes.
And you'll be hearing our cast on Tuesday, so it will be tomorrow when you're hearing this. So,
yep.
Make sure you listen to it or watch the recording. I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of sweet stuff.
All right. Well, I think that just about wraps it up. Any final thoughts? Any last mentions before we sign out?
I don't think so. I'm super excited that we're not getting the general release, but we are getting 2 new factions this week. So
I'm ready, man. I'm ready to represent the Republic and continue playing the good guys.
The Republic.
Only the good guys from a certain point of view.
That's right.
From a certain point of view. All right. Well, for the Scoundrels, my name is David.
I'm Kyle.
And I'm Mike.
We'll catch you later.
Join us next week for another episode of the Notorious Scoundrels.
This has been a Fifth Trooper production.